Okay, so a big hello to everyone. This conversation will be entirely in English, so I'll make my introduction in English as well. I'm really, really happy and proud that we'll have a really nice debate with a great artist, Object Blue, who is very outspoken. So be prepared to to be amazed. Um, and Object Blue is a music producer, a music artist, sound artist, DJ, and many more things. Uh, but what we need to know is that she will be amazing us tonight at Club Monocle. So for everyone watching out there, be sure to join us later on in the evening. Um, and perhaps, so we're very short in introduction, and I let you speak. The first question of you just put out your first EP with the title "Do you plan to end a siege?" And of course, I have to ask this question. I understand it's one of the questions you're asked on a daily basis, but it's like, who is under siege, and which siege do we need to end?
I took that phrase from a film, a scene in a film called The Portuguese Nun by Eugene Green. It's probably my favorite film. I recommend everyone watch it because then you'll probably understand why I referenced it. But, many things are under siege in reality. Like, I think we have to mention Gaza and Palestine given what happened in the techno community this week with the DJ for Palestine campaign and Room for Resistance, which is one of the best crews I've ever met, who's like really committed to equality and fighting injustice, were kicked out of About Blank 4 days before their event. I think it's a real shame. But I guess it's also pretty spiritual because in the film, an actress is talking to a nun in Lisbon, and the nun is called Joan after Joan of Arc, and the actress jokes like, "Oh, are you planning to end a siege?" And she says, "Yes, God is besieged within me." And I thought that was really nice. Like, I'm not religious, but um, I just thought that was a really nice, like, like a very difficult. It's not a comfortable truth about ourselves, like what we besiege within ourselves. And I've been like waiting to make music like my whole life, and I really started quickly putting out music, and people think I'm really productive, but it's just because I had all this music like trapped inside me all these years, and I only really learned how to let it out. So there's that personal meaning as well.
In one of the interviews, you explained that growing up in Beijing, in the suburbs, and then moving to London, but coming to London the second time and seeing the music, the dance scene, the clubs, and being integrated in it, that it was kind of a different experience for you, going from R&B music or classical music that you consumed when you were a child or teenager back home, and then finding electronic music, dance music, and totally different beats. Do you think um, that our bodies, our realities, um, kind of dictate what we create in a sense that happened with you when you were exposed to the scene, when you had an abundance of it? You came to realization, oh, I like the beat, I want to do something like this. Um, and how do you think the artists nowadays, in the 21st century, with all the technology that we have, and all the opportunities that technologies bring to us, like we can get any information we want, but being in the place and experiencing it is something totally different? Do you think that we still need this organic, real experience of being immersed into something in order for us to create or to realize that we want to create something?
Oh yeah, absolutely. If we lost physical space to experience art or connection, we'd all go insane, I think. We talk about the digitization of emotion and socializing. And it's true, like I message my friends far more than I see them and stuff like that. But like everyone downloads Tinder not because they want to stay on Tinder forever, but because they actually want to meet in real life, right? And people download albums and listen to mixes, and they really want to see the artist in flesh after that, because like sound is a really physical thing. If you can be a part of the vibration, like, and I'm not talking like good vibes vibration, I'm talking like physics, like vibration. It's a really special thing, like when you feel the bass in your chest and stuff. I don't think I'll ever get bored of that feeling, even though like outside of music I just stay home. I'm totally like that. But I love the dance music culture because it's really communal. Like it's a really community based experience, and you can only have that if I think you can only have it like really authentically if the community is in one space. Like we try to sustain the community by, sharing music online and talking with people, organizing things over Facebook Messenger, but I think it really all comes to fruition um, when we're all on the dance floor together. With that being said, I don't think that physical environment is like it's important, but I don't think it's the end all be all of like what kind of art an artist makes, because there are people who was born and bred in London and they still like listen to Pink Floyd every day. Um, no disrespect to Pink Floyd, but like I find that really boring personally. Um, when you can go to like Homerton and listen to really new music by new generations, but a lot of people don't. And I had no one around me who was listening to like Rasta Noton, but I found it somehow. I think it really has a lot to do with your natural inclinations. Like I think even if I didn't move to London, I would probably still make electronic music. It might not be very good because I don't have a lot of exposure to it, but I do think it's something that some people are just really, really intuitively drawn to, because like sound is such like I think it's quite primal. It's not like language, every species react to sound, and we all have preferred sounds and not. And I think in my case that just managed to manifest because I managed to find sounds I like most commonly on the dance floor.
Do you think you mentioned the dance community and that you like it? Do you think we can bring politics on the dance floor? The new idea or the new old idea of bringing politics back on the dance floor, because we have to remember that sometimes the music started as a political thing to do, as a political sound intervention into spaces, or it came from communities, minority communities or subcultures where it was an important part of that culture. But like I said, it's a different world now, and with all that we have at our fingertips, um, how do we bring the politics back to the dance floor, and how do we make this community that is really pleasant? The dance community is embracing, is loving, um, but how do we connect this community into a community that will be political also outside of the dance floor, that the community that will know how to react to the world that we live in, that is a world that's very liberal in one sense and very extremely conservative on the other.
Well, I don't actually think politics ever left the dance floor. I think it's more that the power imbalance got shaken up a little bit, so people noticed the change and they're like, oh, back in my day, there were no politics on the dance floor, just, good times and just, like drugs and like I would grope women and they didn't complain, and I miss those days. Well, tough, because I don't care about their about their satisfaction. The politics was always there. The politics was that the minorities like didn't have enough of a safety net. Bouncers didn't believe us. Um, we were treated like as gross people in the space. Like we were treated like tokens or like sexual objects in the space, and that's a form of politics. It's a male dominant, racist, heterosexual politics. It's just that right now people are advocating for a different type of politics where there is not as much gender imbalance, not as much racism, not as much homophobia, and then suddenly people realize, oh, like it's about politics now. But no, you always benefited from politics. Like status quo is made of politics, and I mean it's the same everywhere else. Like dance floors don't exist in a vacuum of society where we are completely immune from the society. We are just a small, space within this society, and what happens outside a dance floor is going to inform, what happens within the dance floor. This is why women get harassed on the street and on the dance floor exactly the same. Like gay people get harassed on the street, on the dance floor, racial minorities the same. So to pretend that dance floor had no politics for the last 10, 20, 30 years is to pretend that there were no politics on the streets, or in parliament or in education, medicine, which is obviously not true. And I mean, politics is about like just power structures, and I find it interesting that people like to consider politics as like a substance that exists or not. Like for me, politics is more like it's a way of looking at things that we see physically in the world. Like for example, like the clothes we're wearing or the seat we sit on, um, and then wondering why that's the way it is. And so when I see, like a man trying to like touch a girl on a dance floor, like that's you can explain that by misogyny, for example. Um, you can like you can ask why so many dance festivals are very white. Like it's because of class. And I think it's really good that people are now conscious about the fact that there is politics on the dance floor, but in my opinion, it's always been like this, and I think it's a great change that people are willing to consciously acknowledge power dynamics and talk about it, because that's instrumental to changing things. Like, for example, the safest spaces policy is not everything. Like, just because we enforce safe space policy on the dance floor, it doesn't solve misogyny, right? It doesn't solve racism. It doesn't destroy class, but it is something to make people think a little bit about the world we live in, I think. Like I remember um, when I was with like an ex-girlfriend, these guys asked if they could dance with us, and we said no, we're a couple. And then he was like, "Oh, I'm sorry to like have disturbed you. Like, can I ask like how long have you known you were a lesbian?" And I was like, "Dude, like I don't go up to you and be like, yeah, tell me about the first time you hooked up with a girl. Like, it's really invasive." And he was like, "Oh my god, I never thought about that." And probably in our daily life we would never meet. No, this guy and I have no connection, but we met on the dance floor, and then we ended up having a really long talk about heteronormativity, and he was like, "Oh my god, that's so true. I never thought it would be so rude, but it's actually really rude. I would feel really uncomfortable if somebody came and asked me about sexual history of my life the moment I met them." And so, like, this is what I mean when I don't really believe that we can divorce ourselves from politics ever. Like, as long as we live in a society, um, we are controlled by it everywhere we go. And for me personally, I care about being outspoken about politics in dance music, because like I am somebody who makes dance music. It's extremely important to me, and it's I so wish me and my friends could just go out and enjoy music and come home and that's it. But it's never like that. It's always, oh, is she getting harassed? Like, are you okay? Do we need to go outside? Do we report to the bouncer? Like, how are you getting home? Are you going to be safe? And that's a real shame because, I think we want to enjoy just music as much as old time ravers who insist that music is the only thing that matters and that's all they need. Well, like us too, we're just not getting it in a way we want to. I don't want to be crying because a guy groped me when I'd rather be on the dance floor listening to like my favorite DJ. So I'm sorry, I don't think I answered the question in the end.
Well, actually, you answered and added a lot of important topics, and I was just thinking that maybe people who say it's just about music, it's all about just music, are people who don't have to be aware of their surroundings, right? So you have to be the protected class, so to speak. But do you think as um, do you think that we as embodiment of otherness, either it's our sexuality or race or gender, mm, we do the heavy lifting of explaining to people who are not aware of situation, and it's like in a way this is not our role in the world. It shouldn't be like this. If you're somebody who's in precarious position, then you have to do some extra work to explain something to somebody who is privileged enough to not be aware of it, and yet we still do it. We do our share of it, our share of activism just by default because we are who we are. Um, but are you thinking about it as well when you're doing music? Like, do you think about yourself as, okay, I'm doing my music and I'm doing it because I love it. I want to give the message outside to the world, but are you also thinking about, I am aware that I can be seen as the token other that you mentioned, which is very unpleasant position a lot of times, but also mm, like the message that you give outside is very important for other people, for other sexual minorities, for other racial minorities or other races. So do you think about yourself? You said you have to be aware of yourself every moment of this day because you're not in a privileged position to forget. But when you create music, how much do you think about it?
I actually don't think about anything when I make music. That might be a disappointing answer to a lot of people, but for me, music making has always been about there's this sound I hear in my head and I try to get it out by using technology, and that's it. What I am aware though is when I play music in public, I'm aware that maybe like LGBT people or women or racial minorities might feel a bit safer on the dance floor. So I think about that. But notice like I wouldn't really think about that unless I was there in physical reality. If I was just somebody who uploaded tunes to SoundCloud, and that's all I was for the first few years, I didn't expect to play any parties, I didn't expect to have any audience in real life. I think if I just stayed behind my computer screen, like anonymously, I never would have thought about women on the dance floor very much, or marginalized people on the dance floor very much. But now that I am behind the booth, after I finish making the music and then I go out into the public and I share this physical space with lots of people, that's when I start thinking. And that's when I go, okay, like, if anyone has a problem, let one of us know. Like zero tolerance. If someone makes you uncomfortable, they're out. Like, but when I make music, I don't really think because music for me is not really about thinking, it's about feeling. Um, and Yeah, for me, like I'm really vocal about me being a woman in this world, amongst other things. But in the end, we are really vocal about these things, and we work through activism and things like that, precisely so that one day we don't have to think about it at all. Like, women only lineups, I'm personally for it because I think quotas actually help in overturning current power structures. But for me, the point of having women only lineup is to have them until one day we don't even think of them as women only lineup. It's just a lineup. We don't notice anything novel about it. Just like how when we have male only lineups, no one says, oh, the festival presents a all male lineup. It's just a lineup. And so for people who are like, oh, you want to bring race and gender into everything, I'm like, well, I don't want to, but in order for me to just be a pure enthusiastic music nerd only thinking about sound and beats, I have to be really loud about it until then. And I don't expect to reap the benefit of that within my lifetime. Like, I am sure misogyny, racism, homophobia will be well and alive 200 years later if the earth still like exists. And but me personally reaping my reward is not why I choose to remain like vocal about it. It's for the generations after, like yeah.
This was really wonderful. Also, the part where you said um, that maybe it's disappointing, but when you create, you think only about music. And I was thinking, yes, but isn't it nice trying not being in position where you can just create in a sense of where you finally have an opportunity to turn to yourself and think only of yourself when you're creating sort of a solitary thing that happens, and then this solitary thing is transplanted into realities outside. You dedicated your record to all the women on the dance floor, and you said that you are aware that the minorities or women can feel more safer on the dance floor while you're behind the decks while you're doing your magic. But how much of a importance of the space and the people in it do you change your live sets, or do you change your DJ sets according to the people that you kind of see in the club at that point? How much flexibility do you have in when you're on the stage and doing things in that moment?
I have no flexibility in my life sets. I wish I did, but I've only been making music a short while, so I only play material that I like on that day. Like, for example, I have a live set I played in Leeds a few months back. I've never played it since because while I was playing it, I realized I was quite bored, and then I just never opened it again. That's what decides what I play on the dance floor. Like, I think everyone has a pressure to play really pure techno when they play in Berlin. And I actually noticed that during Atono, a lot of people who I knew for playing broken rhythm and really frantic stuff were very like 4/4 when they were playing in the massive Kraftwerk complex, which is obviously quite intimidating and has its own history. But I can't do that because I don't like it enough, the material I have. I think some artists are so like versatile and they can make so many different styles and they like all of them. But for me, it's hard to have material that I really, really dig and have a lot of it. So I played my I played new material stuff from my first and second EP, all mixed together at Berlin Atono, and I had fun, so I'm playing that tonight as well. Um, the only time I really pay attention to what's happening on the dance floor is, like, for example, if I start going really loud and then people are cheering, then I'll be like, okay, I'll keep this energy up. But I never really um, change, I guess, the style of my music. One thing is when I play in gay clubs, I feel a lot more comfortable dropping R&B samples because people are really open to that. Um, and I guess like I wouldn't feel that great dropping like an Aaliyah sample too much at a straight club because all the boys were like, "What is this? Like, I didn't come here to listen to women sing." So when I was playing in a gay club, I felt really like, oh, I can do whatever I want because I love R&B. It's like one of my biggest influences. Um, but yeah, mostly it's all about my taste, and I guess that's why I'm an artist because we're all like obsessed with ourselves and we think we have the best taste. Um, and we do it sort of like in like a masturbatory like, oh, it sounds good to me, but I really believe in that. I think male artists get to do that all the time. They just get to like jack off into like their sound system and they're like, oh my god, this sounds amazing. And like I do the exact same thing. I make something and I'm like, oh my god, I'm a genius. I don't think that usually after I perform. After I perform, I was like, that was really shit. I don't even know who books me anymore. But before I go onto the stage, I'm like, I like this, and that's why I'm playing this.
It's kind of refreshing to hear this position because there's always this discussion between the mostly DJs about how much you should follow the crowd. And of course, the opinions vary, and a lot of people are saying, especially the ones that are more on the neoliberal side, say, well, it's about the demand, right? I change my sets, I change my things when the public demands it. But on the other hand, you have people who say, okay, it's good being flexible in a sense that if I feel the space differently, then I will play different things. But I'm not an entertainment, just merely an entertainment. I'm an artist as well, so I want to tell my story. So in that sense, do you feel like an artist? Um, but with the stuff that you did, what were the sounds that you wanted to share with people? So the sounds that you put on the EP, because um, a lot of critics said, "Oh, she has really rough, warlike sounds," or this is really interesting and hardcore. And I heard you say before that you think of it, yeah, but I don't think it's rough. I don't think it's raw. I think it's just nice. This is what was pleasant for me at that time. So what were the sounds that you wanted to produce for people to listen to when you were making this record?
So I made everything that's on the record I made for one live set I played this January, and it was at Corsica Studios, and I was playing Room 2, which has one of the best bassy sound systems I've ever heard. And Corsica Studios is like really special to me. It's what single-handedly like drove me into making techno because I spent like every weekend there for a year, and then I came out of it and being like, oh, why do I love techno so much? And then it was that. So Corsica Room 2 has this amazing intense sound, and I wanted to do a live set that would do justice to that sound system. Um, Previously, when I played, I often had problem with volume because I would often be the only live act of the night, and all the other DJs are at the same volume. But because I have a live set and I fade a lot of samples in and out, and I could always hear people talking during my set. So just practically, I was like, I'm going to make something really loud and full just to make people shut up. And it was just that. It was nothing deep. It was like, how do I feel when I'm in Corsica, at 1 a.m. and I just want to dance? And that's why it became such an aggressive sounding record. But yeah, for me, like, not many things sound that aggressive or dark. It's just my personal like lean towards these sounds, I guess, because I would make a song and I think like, oh, this sounds like summer, this is such a summery song, and people will be like, that sounds like midwinter, and I'll be like, what? Like, so, but yeah, I think that's the reason why it's such a percussive record, and it's very homogenic, like homogeneous. Sorry, I'm a Björk fan, so I just make mistakes like that. All the three tracks have quite a similar sound palette, and because it's one live set made into three tracks. With my second EP, I have my first track at 108 BPM, and it's quite, it's not as like pumping, you know. I don't think you could really dance to it, um, because I wasn't thinking about it in terms of playing it on a dance floor, but with my first EP, it was really dance floor focused, and that's also why it felt appropriate to dedicate it to women on the dance floor, because I was thinking about all the women I met on the dance floor and people who helped me get onto those dance floors. So yeah, it was pretty practical, I guess.
When you think about people who helped you get where you are, in a sense that you've met them, that they are either your colleagues or they support you in various ways, I'd have to ask you, so are there any particular colleagues that you feel closer to, or that you feel that you like them a lot, you can relate to what they're doing? I mean, this is something that obviously changes all the time, but and the same question connected to spaces. If you know, one space made you create a record like this, then what are other favorite spaces that you have that you feel, you know, these are places I either played or danced there, and I really love them. I really love the crowd, the whole architecture, the sound, everything.
I have a few favorites that never change. So Siren is a London-based techno collective, and I'm friends with them, and but more than anything, I think we respect each other as artists. I met Siren before they even became Siren. I met two of the women in there at a music workshop, and then we kept in touch. And I remember they asked me over SoundCloud one day, "Hey, do you DJ?" And I said no, because back then I still didn't know how to DJ. I started producing before I started DJing. And 2 weeks later, they announced Siren, and I was like, "Oh my god, I should have just lied and be like, yeah, I DJ," and then like I could have been a part of them. Um, but thank God, since I learned, I've been on their NTS show. They've invited me to play parties with them, and they're always somebody I think of as like a true colleague, I guess. And Machine Woman is really important to me as a friend, and as like I'm a big fan of hers. Like I forget that because we're friends now and I know all of her like goofy sides and stuff. But every time I hear her play, I'm like, oh my god, like I almost cry because I think she's an amazing musician. But she really gave me the confidence when I first started making music, and you know we all have imposter syndrome, but she commented on every single one of my SoundCloud tracks. Like I was a bit freaked out actually. I tweeted at her before I went to bed and I woke up and she had a comment on every single one of my uploads, like from like 2 years ago. And she was like, "This reminds me of this soundtrack." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, she's so weird." What the hell? But then like she just kept tweeting at people like Ben UFO listened to her, like Fact Mag listened to her, and I was like, oh my god, can she stop? But like I'm really grateful for that she always believed in me. She's actually in Zagreb right now, and she was like, we should meet in the middle, and I was like, where? Like the border? um, but yeah, every time I get to see her both professionally and personally is so important to me. Um, I really have to shout out my label Let's Go Swimming that I just put out Rex on. Um, it's run by Henry and Will, and Henry was one of the first labels to ever approach me to release their music, and they've always just been a massive like fan of me. And they invited me to play at the Waiting Room, which is a club in Stoke Newington that they have a partnership with. So I've played there 4 times now, which is more than any other times I've played another club. And I've spent a lot of really great nights there, so I definitely think of that space as like one of like my musical homes, and I think uh, it really influenced Rex. It's a very small rectangular like room, and the sound is really good, and that's a space I think about a lot. I loved playing Dalston Superstore because um, I go there like all the time, and it's always a good time. And I mean, like I like disco a lot, so um, and they usually only play disco, and I was a bit worried that what I play wouldn't. I DJ'd there, and I was worried that what I play there wouldn't be like that welcomed, but everyone was down with it, and that was like a real homecoming to me. Yeah.
I have one last question connected with media exposure or interviewing, but before that, I would just like to ask people who are here if they have any questions or comments or anything, if they would like to participate in this discussion. Um, so it's kind of a invitation to intervene, or okay, that's good. That's I think a local thing where we usually don't ask the artists while they're on the stage, but afterwards, while we're sipping coffee, we're having very deep conversations. Um, my last or almost last question would be connected to the media exposure, in a sense that you're getting. Everybody wants to ask you questions about, how do you do things? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? And on one hand, I would presume that it's a nice thing because you get to say certain things for the public to hear. You can be heard, right? You get the voice. But on the other one, there's this unfortunate position where you become the person, the spokesperson for every problem anyone can think of, right? So, and I was thinking, how much of that do you get, or maybe you're lucky and you get good questions, or different kind of media exposure. So, how do you feel in the spotlight when you're being interviewed, or?
I think it's terrible that artists get the spotlight because most people I know have terrible opinions. Like, that's just let's just get it out of the way. I don't think I really think it's wrong that artists' opinions are spotlighted just because they are. Like, I think it must be something like celebrity culture, even if you make really weird music. Um, like, why not encourage that level of like being observant and outspoken in like everyone else? I'd rather people all talk to each other about this than listen to a select few. Like I love Kanye, I'm a big fan, but I never expected like great political commentary from him. And I remember when he, posed with Donald Trump, people were devastated. But I was like, he's a billionaire. What do you expect? Um, like, I love Björk, but she spent the last 10 years saying like, oh, feminists are so boring. Like, you should stop complaining and just do it. Just like a man. And like, so I was like, okay, I'm just going to pretend I never heard that, and I'm gonna keep on listening to her music and like, just like wipe that part out of my memory. So yeah, I do think, I don't know, I just don't really believe in placing importance on some people's opinion when they're not that particularly like dedicated to it. Like, for example, I got asked to contribute my opinions on the cons and pros of BDS for like a music publication, and I was like, are you serious? Like, not that I can't answer, because I personally have been reading and thinking and arguing a lot about Israel Palestine for like the like years. But can you imagine like if you ask a DJ and they go, "Oh yeah, I think it's good, but maybe also bad," and then everyone's like, like what is the point? Like, why don't we ask activists and academics who are really, really invested in this? Like, why don't you ask the Palestinian organizations themselves what's the pros of BDS, and why don't you ask the Israeli government, other than the fact that they will lie about yeah, I'm so neutral on this position, about whether, you know, BDS is effective or not. Like, why ask me? Like, I understand that people think, oh, she's speaking about it, so she must want to be known for this, but actually, I just believe that everyone should be talking about all of this, and I just don't make an exception for myself, not because I'm an artist, but because I'm a person within the society. Like, even if I were, you know, like an electrician, I would talk about this, you know? The difference is I won't have music publications asking my opinions on like government policies. Um, Somebody I actually did get a like very kind gentleman on my Facebook page recently that was like, "Oh, please don't talk about politics. Like you're just a DJ. You know, like if you want to talk about this stuff, why don't you become a politician?" And I was like, "Well, I'm sorry that I'm a really good DJ, and you know, like God gave me this burden." Um, I'm totally kidding. I'm actually not that great a DJ. Um, but to me, that's a ridiculous question because that's like saying politics only exist in parliament, which is obviously not true. And for me, it's just about being a human with a conscience. That's it. I just tweet because I'm like screaming into the void, except the void has somehow taken in 2,000 people who like reply to everything I say. But I don't care. Like that's also why I tweet about like the burger I ate yesterday, and you know like the show I saw the other day, and my phone broke because I'm literally just talking out loud, and we have this technology now that makes everyone stand on a soapbox. But it's not because I'm an artist. Like I think it's our responsibility as a human being, and I think if we lived in a world where only politicians could talk about politics and only artists could talk about art, then we'd be like, we might as well just like nuke ourselves because civilization is over, baby. So, yeah, that's my answer.
Thank you so much for this answer, and it's really, really refreshing, and I couldn't agree more. Um, so, in the light of everything that we talked about, and the voices coming from the grassroots community, and artists being true to themselves, and being an artist, also a political person, let's just invite everyone um, tonight to Monocle to participate in this community that is going to happen there, and to listen to Object Blue and to all the other lovely people from Ustanova who made possible for this thing to happen. And let's be supportive of each other, and let's be on equal footing in a sense that we come to respectfully listen to other people speak or play music, and enjoy each other's company. I thank you very, very much for this conversation and for this fresh set of mind that you brought to this discussion. And let me just tell you, everyone, be sure to follow Object Blue on Twitter as well, because it's really worth just being there and reading stuff. It's really, in your face, and it's fantastic. So I wish you a really nice experience with all the people that are going to come. And I know, I have a hunch that they're gonna love what you're going to play to them, and that they will perceive the rough sounds of midwinter a little more like a spring. I mean, I think our community likes this kind of heavy sounds and everything. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.